welcome to this episode of Chain Conversations. My name is Laura McQueen and I'm the MD here at Leaders. This season is part of a programme called the Leaders Meet Diversity series, which we've been running in partnership with Facebook for a couple of years now. Chain Conversation brings together leaders from a variety of backgrounds across professional sport to share their personal stories, to reflect on their own career journeys, pinpointing some peaks and troughs, some helps and hindrances along the way to share with you. The premise is simple, really. Person A picks person B to interview, person B picks person C to interview, and so on and so on. So over the course of the coming months, you'll really get exposed to quite a lot of independent personal journeys throughout the sports industry. The aim is to inspire you, to energise you, and to showcase why diverse thinking and diverse opportunity makes for a better business across sport and beyond. I really hope you enjoy it and speak to you soon.
Hello everyone, my name's Paul Cleal and I'm here this morning to do the next interview in the Chain Conversation series Leaders Meet with Tony Burnett, a good friend of mine, the Chief Executive of Kick It Out, the well-known anti-racism charity that works in football. Tony, good morning to you.
Hi Paul, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Pleased to see you.
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I enjoyed doing this interview last time, and my turn to inflict the questions this time. So, so like Michelle did when she interviewed me, and I think it's good to just start, perhaps to introduce yourself to people who won't necessarily, they'll know about Kick It Out, I'm sure, but they won't know the kind of very interesting career history you've had. So tell us a bit about your career journey so far and how you went through such a variety of industries. And perhaps also touch on what's your favourite job so far.
Well, career-wise, I kind of started off, came from a kind of really quite a tough background in Bolton. Education, I didn't do fantastic well, trying to combine education with school. Ended up on what used to be a kind of old YTS scheme. That was my first foray into business. And I spent the first few years kind of transitioning through low-level business world. And then essentially, went to night school in my mid-20s and got my degree and then master's degree, which was kind of the pivotal leap forward for me, I guess. I then joined Diageo. So I spent a few years with Diageo in kind of middle management roles, and then was promoted into senior leadership roles in commercial environments. So my teams used to look after Asda, Sainsbury, Tesco's negotiation around, commercial deals predominantly. And then I was part of the talent program in Diageo. So I ended up we had an option of going into finance or HR, and I've never been a finance person, although it's part of my remit. I know I have to do it. So I ended up as head of people development for Guinness Great Britain, and that's when I started getting a real passion for diversity, because it was kind of late 90s and people were this issue was really becoming a more aligned to being a profession rather than just a topic of conversation in organisations. And ended up kind of having a diversity portfolio within Guinness and Diageo, and then moved to Ford Motor Company. So I spent a couple of years at Ford Motor Company with a European brief, and then I had my own consulting business. Left Ford and started my own business for 8 years. We operated in the UK and South Africa around a lot of issues linked with that, obviously around diversity, but in South Africa, a lot of it was on the Black economic empowerment, which was big in the early 2000s. Shut that business in 2010 and joined Lloyds Banking Group as head of DE&I. Had a brief foray back in the commercial world as MD for 3 years, MD of a food manufacturing business up in North Yorkshire, and then I joined West Midlands Police. I've always my career is kind of twofold really. It's essentially commercial leadership roles and D&I. My passion's D&I. That kind of gets me out of bed in the morning, making a difference. But I've also got a kind of intellectual need to and want sometimes to prove myself in the commercial world, and I love that kind of challenge of being able to drive, build, grow businesses, and being able to kind of motivate people on that journey as well.
Yeah, I think you're very like me in that respect, in terms of wanting to do something commercial, but actually the real drive, which is that makes you get up in the morning, is often what you're really passionate about, and that's very much inclusion, I think, for both of us. That's great. But what a wide range. I mean, drinks, food, there's a connection, I suppose, there, but then cars, banking, black empowerment in South Africa, and now football. So that's an incredible range, and to do all that you say, having not had the greatest start, it was amazingly impressive. And I mean, what was it that kind of, just going back to the point you made about getting the qualification and that sort of turning point in the master's degree, and what was it that really kind of gave you the kind of confidence to believe that you could kind of be a success from that kind of limited background?
I guess I've always been quite stubborn. I mean, one of my dad was an activist. Really, he was a union guy, but he also ran Bolton West Indian Community Centre for 30 years. But he was an activist, so we were very much brought up to kind of challenge status quos, and that old narrative of we can be whatever, but you've got to work harder was very much embedded in me. And in my early career, that's exactly the kind of notion I adopted. I just thought if my competitors are working 8 hours, I'm going to work 10. If they're delivering 10% increases in revenue, I'm going to deliver 20. And I just wanted to make it really hard to be ignored. And I got to a stage in my career where I just had ambitions to be in the biggest blue chip organisations, the likes of Diageo. And the thing that was holding me back was that I didn't have a degree. So I went to night school. I got 2 small children at the time, actually. So it was an interesting few years doing my degree and my master's degree at night school in the days before the internet, and spending every weekend sat in a library scrolling through books for references. But that opened up doors for me. And literally as soon as I got my degree, because my track record was so good in terms of delivery, I had kind of blue chip organisations opening doors all over the place, really. And what it kind of taught me is, there are some hurdles that some boxes you just got to tick. In that case, it was a degree that was holding me back, but and it was hard to get through. But it opened up the second half of my career, and it allowed me to access everything else that's happened in the last 20, 25 years, really. Yeah,
and I'm sure it gave you much more than the tick box. But yeah, I think there's a lot of areas where I think we have to be very careful we don't ask for unnecessary boxes to be ticked, and sometimes that's happened with degrees, without a doubt. Yeah. Activism. You mentioned activism. Well, I mean, we're in the week of the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. So it's been a year of activism, I think, for lots of people, and perhaps many of us who haven't thought of ourselves as activists much before have been joining in, perhaps more than perhaps people had expected. So what do you feel? I mean, what did that event mean to you personally, and how much do you feel the world's actually changed in the intervening 12 months?
Looking back now, I think it's been a really fascinating 12 months. I mean, on a personal level, I think one of the interesting things is it's opened up a conversation. So I've probably had more conversations with white friends about racism. Well, not probably, I have, in the last 12 months, and what racism means and what it looks like and how it feels, than I have in the last kind of 40 years. And part of that, when I look back, is probably because what George Floyd did was give us a platform to feel enabled to do that, because it felt like the first time in many, many years, even with white friends and family, there's almost a kind of line that people didn't want to go across. But there's been a thirst to try and understand some of the challenges in the last 12 months, which I think has been really important. And I've had a lot of fallouts as well, actually, because the other thing that the last 12 months has shown me is that the lack of knowledge and education for some, not just white people, but predominantly the white people I'm speaking to around these issues, and some of the throwaway comments that become, the tropes that kind of underpin some of these issues are just too easy to kind of throw out without any knowledge of people's lived experience or the circumstances, or actually the structural issues that underpin racism in this country. So I'm really pleased on that level. I'm disappointed on another level, because I think there's also been an opportunity missed, and I think certain parties, probably from a political perspective, and I say that kind of educatedly, I think, as well, have used this as an opportunity to deflect from the real issues. So we spent a lot of time talking about symbols like statues, a lot of time talking about gestures like taking the knee, and not enough time talking about structural racism. What does it look like? How do we dismantle it? What are the things we need to do to really impact it?
Yeah, I find that really frustrating as well. I mean, these symbols are obviously important, no matter a lot to people, but it does deflect a lot of attention from an effort from the underlying. Yeah. I think your point about opening up a conversation is exactly what I've seen in the last 12 months. And I've perhaps underestimated, I think, the extent to which people hadn't thought about some of this. So there is, as you say, some unhelpful behaviour, but at the bottom of this actually is a lot of just, I never really thought about what it was like for you. And I totally agree with you about that. And obviously football's been one of those areas where we've seen a very visible activism, started very much on the pitch through the players. I mean, what brought you into football? What made you want to get into the game, and why does it matter to you?
Good question, Paul. So I've played since I was 7 or 8 years old. So my first, one of the reasons I didn't, that sounds like an excuse, and I'm kind of way beyond excuses. I take responsibility for all my choices. One of the reasons I didn't do well at school, I always kind of, I clinged on to football. So I had quite a few trials when I was younger and ended up playing youth team level for Huddersfield Town. And you know, thought I was going to make it until that day came that says you're not going to get a contract. I was a long-term trialist, played in the FA Youth Cup, and then that was it. I was kind of out. So I've always, and then for years I played kind of semi-pro and good grassroots, depending on where my career was. If my career was kind of quite stable and I was settled in an area, not much travelling, I was able to train twice a week and play at a good level. If not, I had to drop down a little bit and just do what I could. And then when my kind of playing career finished, I coached. I'm qualified UEFA B coach, and so I coached for many years. But the thing football gave me more than anything is, I mean, my best friend, from Salford, played together 40 years. Well, I've known him for 37 years. We played together kind of for a lot of that time. And football for me is a beautiful vehicle where people from all walks of society just come together, and it's a common language. And I would never have met Pete were it not for football. You know, one of the most important people in my life. And on the face of it, you'd put us together. We do different jobs. We're in different careers completely. But you know, I trust him more than anybody on the planet, and I'm grateful that I met him. And I think that's the beauty of football. But I also think that football's got such a great opportunity to use that power of bringing people together to forge positive debate, discussion, dialogue around some of these issues. So, and I know I'm an idealist when it comes to that, Paul. I think you are a bit as well. But I just think whether you're a supporter or a player, it's where people come together with a common purpose, and I love that about football.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I guess I'm a bit of an idealist and a bit of an optimist, but I feel that's a good thing, because, yeah, maybe some of the stuff we try won't work, but if we don't try, we can for sure know that nothing will change. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. Which brings us, I guess, to kick it out. And you've had a few months now. Is it 5 months since you joined? 4 or 5 months? Yeah.
Yep.
So you're through your 100 days or whatever the measure is that people apply when your excuses run out. So you're still here. And what's the next 12 months, got in store? What do you most want to change?
On a kind of, I suppose, on a strategic level, we did some stuff around anniversary of George Floyd a couple of days ago, and I'm massive on wanting to, and I think we've got a key role to play in this, change the debate. So I hope over the next 12 months we can really start talking about, and football's just one avenue for this, structural racism, systemic racism, what it looks like and how it impacts people from different backgrounds in society. And have an honest conversation about what needs to be done, rather than, but my worry is that as we go back to full stadiums next season, the debate again gets hijacked around who's booing the players taking the knee, and when actually what we need to talk about actually is why there are no Black Premier League managers now. The one sole survivor has just resigned. What is it's going on in the systems that's not allowing people from different backgrounds to get through? And that's the same for a whole kind of host of issues, not just from a Black or Asian perspective. I want us to get into position, let's kick it out, where we're really focusing on some of the core issues. Online hate has been talked about a lot, but not enough has been talked about when it comes to, or spoken about when it comes to, misogyny. Some of the stuff I see that female colleagues and women within the game are subjected to. I mean, it's criminal, but it doesn't get anywhere near enough prominence, and some of it's kind of overt and horrific. Some of it's just subtle stereotypes that are thrown out about women's role in society that we really need to start challenging. So that's what I'm hoping for over the next 12 months. We get involved in the debates to try and drive the conversations in the way they need driving, to tackle the root causes of some of these issues.
Yeah, so you mentioned online hate, and obviously the focus of that has been inevitable, not just because of the amount of it, but also the lack of the alternatives, because we haven't had the real world watching, as you say. So we've got that to come back, hopefully, in the sense of supporters back in stadia in big numbers for the new season. So there's that side of things. You've mentioned about opportunities for coaches. What do you see as the sort of biggest challenge facing Kick It Out going forward?
Good question. I think our biggest challenge is our biggest opportunity. I mean, I think we've got quite a good presence, and tell me if you disagree on this, Paul. It feels like we've got quite a good presence in the professional game and among the institutions, and that's probably partly linked to our kind of historical funding scenarios as well. I think where I want us to really expand our footprint is grassroots. You know, the girls and boys that are coming into our parks every weekend. That's a massive opportunity for us to influence change, because that's the group who are, you know, having the dialogue now about what it's like living in the UK society. They're forming friendships now that I want us to be a part of. When they're being abused because some idiots running up and down a touchline on a Saturday or Sunday morning, behaving completely inappropriately, I would love that, you know, those kids, those young people and their parents feel they've got a support mechanism where they can report it and know that something's going to be done through Kick It Out. So that's where I see us making a big impact the next 12 months. I think it's the next 5 years is in grassroots football. I really want us to get a grip of that and really work hard to imprint something properly in grassroots football.
Yeah, and that's obviously a big challenge, isn't it? Because obviously we've seen the awful abuse that some of the most high-profile players get, but when you consider the amount of resources that they have around them to help them support them, you just know that, you know, on the proverbial Hackney Marshes, you know, there's kind of no one there to protect you, is there? So I mean, it's very widespread, and I think sometimes we underestimate that. So that's a very worthy challenge, and I think we should remember that football isn't just about, you know, the elite level. Hopefully we can see some progress there. And just personally, I mean, in terms of, you know, the future, I mean, what excites you most? I know you're an optimist and an idealist, so something must excite you. What do you think is what excites you most about the future?
It excites me. It excites me. I think the conversation, particularly around, you know, race has started. I'm excited to keep that going. I'm massively excited. I think there's the next generation really excite me, and I think that's one of the fascinating things I loved about. I don't know what you think about that, Paul, but last 12 months, the number of young people from all backgrounds, black, white, pink, blue, female, male, that have got a kind of higher awareness and a higher level of social conscience than I think probably our generations had. That excites me, because I think we're stepping into a future where the young people coming up now will not accept the same rules and dynamics that we've had to live through. And I think there's a real movement now to say things are going to change, not just in this area, but in lots of other areas. So I think I'm excited because I think there's a momentum for change that's being carried by our younger generation. And I love having conversations with younger people, because actually I probably forget sometimes I embedded some of that old style thinking is in me. And when I'm saying, well, we can't do X, Y, Z, or this is a challenge, their pushback quite often is why, you know, who said we can't do that? And I love that.
We've seen, haven't we? I mean, the strength of voice from some of the young footballers over the course of the last year. And
absolutely.
I think I hear it as well from sort of nephews and nieces and so on in their 20s, and I guess they wonder why we put up with what we did, you know, a generation ago, and we kind of scramble around for excuses, don't we? And but in the end, yeah, I guess the power dynamic is changing, hopefully, and that gives people more confidence. But yeah, there is a new, I think, view, and I think that does enthuse me too. Yeah. But thinking about, I guess, so far in terms of the people you've seen, it may be a young person, but who would you put down as the most inspirational person you've met? Difficult question, I know.
Lifetime wise, there's a guy called Bill Strickland. I met him in 2003. Bill Strickland, and he's a Black American who started an organisation called Manchester Bidwell, which was a kind of a local project in Pittsburgh to help young people from deprived communities of all backgrounds, actually, with a kind of purpose. And it started off really small as a kind of an outreach centre. It's now a huge organisation. They've got contracts with people like Hewlett Packard to train coders. They supply produce and various other things to supermarkets. So he's built this kind of huge training organisation from. And the fascinating thing about it for me, which is what I loved, is his humility I loved, but also what he's built is a beacon in one of the most rundown parts of America, where young people know they can come, have an opportunity, have hope, and kind of transform their lives. And just the passion he spoke about it was fast. A real life kind of face-to-face example of somebody whose life has been about making a difference. Yeah, he was I'll never forget the one time I met Bill Strickland.
And a very clear read across to what you were saying earlier about grassroots and enabling people to kind of prosper from the bottom. Yeah, that's great. And then lastly, I mean, just thinking back to, I guess when you were probably still hoping to become a professional footballer, and at the age of 16, you could go back and kind of give yourself a bit of advice, given what you know now. What would that piece of advice be?
Football wise, it would be. I don't know why, but it would be just work harder. It would be work. I probably, if I'd applied myself into football in the way that I've applied myself career-wise, as I've matured and understood what you need to do to succeed, it's work harder. And the number of young people I've seen come through the game and do really well on the back of not a huge amount of ability, but on the back of an incredible work ethic. And I can know a couple of professionals now who are playing that I know. One in particular who's and he'll admit himself, he wasn't a fantastic youth player, but he worked harder, so much harder than everybody else to get where he got to. So I think that is kind of point one. If your dreams can be a reality, and often the difference is how hard you're prepared to work and how much you're prepared to put into achieving it. And I've kind of taken that. I learned the lesson too late for football, and I probably wasn't good enough anyway. I'm probably dreaming. But it's been a metaphor for life for me. If I want something bad enough now, then I need to. I just work out: am I prepared to put the work in that it's going to take to get what I want? And if it's important enough, then I'll work harder than anybody to get where I need to get, or get what I want to achieve.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great way to finish, because I think it's the truest thing that I can think of. That working hard is never a guarantee, but without it, it's going to seriously reduce your chances, isn't it? And that's certainly what life's taught me too. So apologies to anyone who's watching who was hoping for an easy ride message, but the world's not like that, is it? And especially obviously from people from relatively disadvantaged backgrounds too. So well, thanks very much for your time, Tony. It's been really fascinating to hear from you and learn a bit more about your very diverse career and how it's taken you to where you are now. And I wish you all the best with your still relatively new job. And hopefully we can work together to achieve some of those goals.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on. Much appreciated.
It's been great. Thanks, Tony.